welcome to Writers Showcase number 136. I am your host, Lord Captain Commander Dunn. Today is going to be a significantly shorter showcase than normal. It's just going to be me and one other guest so far. Maybe another guest will trickle in. Let's bring in Count Valerian, shall we? Yeah.
Hey, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Afternoon. These things start with so much drama. It always starts with pain. It never starts with, I say, would you like a cup of tea?
Yeah, I probably need to use different things for Writers Showcase, but that one's definitely my angry one.
I'm not fussed. I'm just making an observation.
Yeah, I probably just I definitely need to reserve that for when I am super angry, like what I will be next week with
Oh God.
crime.
Yeah. The most annoying thing, from my point of view, the most annoying thing about that is that we can't do the Oathbringer live stream.
Yeah, since I would like to do that, and I do need to make a Prezi, but I would like to cover a part at a time and just lump all the subplots into one thing rather than going on all chronologically through every chapter. Because
Going through every chapter was a bit much. So I mean, it worked the way we did it with Words of Rage, and at least we got it done in one stream. It was a long stream, but at least we got it done in one stream. So that was the hoo-ha that I was preferring, the format I was preferring, but it'll be fine.
Alrighty. So, as the guest, I believe that you should go.
You broke up for a second there, but okay, let me see. This is, so I'm reading the same thing I read last time. The Emperor Kwekwe has sent an army after Lady Margaret and her friends, Barama and Muku. The army is led by a psychopath, and they have wrought destruction and ruin and general mayhem. And the protagonists are not happy, and they have had a discussion about it and made their plans. So hopefully that's clear enough that people can follow more or less what's happening now. Some days later, Margaret, Barama, and Muku led sorties through the secret passageways, each to a different enemy encampment. Margaret came out towards the northeast, where the main encampment was. Barama led a party due east. Muku led another party due north. For once he'd agreed to a sortie, he was committed, and would not be behindhand in whatever needed to be done. As Margaret led her party through the passage, she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. No one uttered a word. Was she ready? She wondered. It was true that she had... Wait. Sorry. Like, don't you hate it when you catch a typo when you're in the middle of reading? Sort of so annoying. But anyway.
Yeah, I hate that.
I should just not say anything and just fix it silently, though. It was true that she had trained for fighting quite rigorously by female standards and was quite good at it, but she had never seen combat. Her father had not fought in any wars, even against the barbarians, since she was 12, and had not brought her along to observe, for her role was to be a governor and mother to her people, not a fighter. That would be her husband's job. Count Adrian had other ideas, and had only grudgingly consented to go on a spy mission or two, so long as there was little danger of actually getting slain. Now she would be put to the test, for now she must be ready to slay and be slain. There was no more time to think on whether she was wise to take part herself. The hour was upon her. As Margaret and her party slipped out of the northeast passage, they found themselves at the back of the square Sandaranian encampment, with the commander's tent in the center and Burunu Governor Bruno's tent next to it. Both were surrounded by smaller tents with provisions and the like. The cavalry were to the left and right. Their tents looked impressive enough, but Margaret knew that cavalry weren't much use here, especially not with the large Sandoranian horses. Smaller Kalaman steeds were better suited to the terrain. She was more concerned about the infantry, who were in the part of the encampment nearest the castle. It was they who were doing most of the dirty work. Margaret was astonished at the lax security. She had expected it to be formidable. A wall had been hastily constructed in front, but no one had bothered to build a wall in back, where Margaret's party entered. Was this a trap? Trap or not, this sloppiness was characteristic of the whole encampment. Margaret marveled that the siege wasn't better planned. How much genuine military experience did the commanders, Equiques, cronies, and friends really have? The answer was not a lot. Even Bruno wasn't much of a warrior. Despite his bravado, Daraimi's military experience had amounted to killing barely armed raiders from the Parentes Mountains, who were almost indomitable in their mountain fastnesses, but fairly weak elsewhere. And even there he had often been outclassed. Since no one had expected much resistance from these provincials, the regiment sent to Ichalamu had been of the lowest class. Una, from the Chuggan word for glyptodont. But Margaret was not to know that, and even if she had, this army, well organized or not, had proved that it could be deadly. It's true that the sentries weren't trying very hard, since most of the soldiers were disaffected and had lost their taste for battle upon realizing that Daraimi intended to keep the saber-toothed tiger's share of the spoils for himself. Sorry, have a second. Wasn't the whole point of fighting to get stuff? They were therefore far more interested in shooting shiny rats and parrots than in stopping humans. To be fair, the shiny rats and parrots were doubtless more edible. The sentries were taking an extended break to enjoy some mango wine. Inferior wine, of course, but what could you expect out here? And most of them were drunk. But as much as the soldiers hated Daraimi, they hated Margaret and her people yet more. It was therefore indeed fortunate that the sentries were ill-prepared when Margaret and her followers suddenly turned up and promptly killed 2 sentries and disarmed the rest. And just like that, the encampment was breached. It almost seemed to Margaret as if battle might not be so hard after all. Attack, she told her soldiers. Grant, with me. Her forces immediately began to spread havoc in the encampment, while Margaret rushed with her bodyguard to the commander's tent, where Bruno was sulking, as usual. Daraimi had gone out for a Sarangi break, as an hors d'oeuvre for the rape fun he intended to engage in later. Bruno and Daraimi were taking a brief hiatus from bickering. When Bruno saw someone enter the tent from behind, he leapt up and grabbed his sword. Then he saw it was Margaret, and laughed with relief. "My lady," he said, "marry me, and let us end this unpleasantness." He offered Margaret a wineskin, which she pointedly ignored. Bruno found that rather rude. "Unpleasantness?" said Margaret. "I call it murder. The murder of hundreds of innocents." "I never meant for all that to come to pass," said Bruno, slightly crestfallen. "I only wanted the army to overawe you a bit, not do all this damage to our estates, not to mention the human livestock. But Exalted willed otherwise, and my colleague, the commanding officer, is an idiot who made things far messier than he needed to, because he enjoys killing and torturing people. I promise I will make it all up to you after we wed. Human livestock was a commonly used term in books of household and estate management, at least in Sonderon. Experts generally agreed that mass killing of human livestock was inefficient, although some held that it had value as an incentive. Dead human livestock don't work very effectively, was the general consensus, but scared livestock might. Nothing can make up for the slaughter at the castle of Tsenyel. This is all the wedding you'll ever get. Margaret raised her sword and stepped forward, knocking over the folded table in the center of the tent and spilling the wine. An appalling waste that, Bruno thought, although at least Daraimi wouldn't get any. Ingrate, said Bruno, raising his sword as well, but stepping well back. Weapons made him nervous, and so did women. I would have given you a name and a rank in society. I already had that, said Margaret, nonchalantly grabbing some food and stuffing it into a bag. Somehow she felt less anxious now that she was actually here. My lineage goes back to the first settlement of these lands from Mindar. All you've brought is destruction, murder, rape, and slavery. That wasn't my doing, insisted Bruno. I tried to stop it. He was annoyed. Why had that fool of a Daraimi? Had he dared, he would have added that fool of an Equeque, but emperors could probably read minds. Pardon me. Had to ruin everything with all this mayhem. True, said Daraimi, his eyebrows twitching. It was my doing. He entered from the front with a disheveled and wretched-looking Saranji on either arm, and he and Margaret proceeded to taunt each other with touching memories of their previous meeting. Well, look, it's the Crow Lady. Daraimi let go of the Saranjis, who shrank back in terror. Your father isn't here to protect you this time. He's in hell. Well, it seems you can stand on 2 feet after all, despite your girth, retorted Margaret, raising her sword in her right hand and making a contemptuous gesture with her left. And my noble father is here, fool. His valor lives on in me. Doubtless true enough, laughed Daraimi. The green and crimson mountain hawk will have its prey. The saber-toothed tiger eats the mountain hawk for breakfast. Soon the crimson on your livery will be your own blood. Or yours. Daraimi began sawing the air excitedly with his right hand and slobbering. Your bridal blood. I'll make a woman of you. You still have made no move to get his sword, though. No, you won't, said Bruno, irritated. Couldn't Daraimi at least stick to Saranjis? The Saranjis, for their part, withdrew further towards the back of the tent and leaned on the stakes to keep from fainting. She's mine, or she would be if you hadn't decided to ruin everything with your loathsome passion, to sate your loathsome passions. Dry up, you provincial milksop, snarled Daraimi. You don't know how to handle women anyway. A Trogon flew in and bit him, probably out of spite. Bruno laughed, which made Daraimi all the more annoyed. He began calling Bruno rude names like rural peasant wench in men's clothing and Margaret's wife. Actually, those were among the more polite names. Imbecilic chugging degenerate, retorted Bruno, waving his left hand contemptuously in Daraimi's direction. Incompetent coward. Margaret took advantage of the altercation to slip out the back of the tent, and, to add insult to insult, she took both Saranjis with her, motioning them to be silent. As long as she was fighting a war anyway, she might as well free some slaves. That would have to take priority over killing Daraimi. "Where, Great One, take us?" they asked in broken Sunderainian as soon as they had got safely away. The sentries were either dead or bound, but there were a fair number of other soldiers, all busy making a hue and a cry and trying to fend off Margaret's forces, who had come upon them at unawares. They quite failed to recognize Margaret, and were too busy or confused to pay much attention to three random women. Margaret hastened back to the secret exit with the Saranjis, resisting the temptation to go knock down the sculpture of Daraimi's mountain hawk. It was imperative that the enemy not see how they escaped. The Saranjis were in no condition to run after their tete-a-tete with Daraimi, but Margaret walked as quickly as she could until she reached the end of the passage and could enlist her guards to help carry the Saranjis. She then sent masons to stop up the exit, so that the enemy might not find it and wreak more destruction than they probably were going to wreak anyway. "That was easy," she remarked. "Too easy. I do not trust this victory. Why were there not more soldiers, and those better prepared?" "Luck or Sacred Nine aided us," said the guard Rom. "They won't let themselves be taken by surprise again." "Not in the same way, certainly," said Margaret. Let's see. How long have I been talking?
15 minutes, so you got 5 more, I think.
Okay, let's see. Or the next section. How long is the next section? Well, maybe I can get a start on the next section anyway then. Meanwhile, the enemy were coming to grips with what had happened. "Where did she go?" said Bruno when he noticed Margaret's absence. He had been temporarily distracted when Daraimi had thrown a rotten mango at him. "Where did they go?" added Daraimi. "Who?" "My Saranjis. I were having so much fun, and I was just going to chain them up." Daraimi's eyebrows bristled. "I don't need these details, and I have no notion where your precious Saranjis went," said Bruno. "You mainlanders might as well be chuggins. Anyway, I need my girl." He went out back and looked rather blankly around. Then he and Daraimi questioned the surviving sentries, who were even blanker. By then, Margaret, her party, except 2 who had been slain, and the Saranjis had already fled through the secret passage. You might think Daraimi and Bruno would have just had their slaves dig around a bit, but they were not very bright, I fear. Daraimi was humiliated, and both he and Bruno knew this full well, which didn't in the least stop Bruno from putting it out several times. If you hadn't sent a third of the garrison after a handful of mangy peasants, perhaps it would have gone better, he added. As it is, we'll need to hold a meeting. Don't try to teach me my expletive job, you cross-dressing lady monkey. I know we have to have a meeting. Expletive it. I'll schedule it for tomorrow. I need to beat up a Saranji. Looked like you already did, murmured Bruno, adjusting his toupee. He'd lost his chief toupee and was now wearing a spare. Now, if only my spies would get back, maybe we'd actually accomplish something despite you. The news spread through the camp that Daraimi and his goons had met their match. So that what ought to have been a walkover had proved anything but. Worse, the fiefs that had supposedly been pacified turned out not to be so pacified after all. And in addition to the sorties from Tserthaton, the assailants had to deal with raids from the northeastern fiefs. those that hadn't been completely ravaged. The army were getting ever the grumpier the longer the war dragged on, with little to show for it. The secret passages were only part of the problem. The Sondaranians had little expertise in guerrilla warfare, and the natives knew the terrain far better than the invading forces. Most of the attacks were now made not only without the leader's authorization, but without their knowledge. This being especially true of the northeastern fiefs. The whole thing was becoming a bother. This does not in the least mean that all went well for Tserthaton. There was still easily enough destruction to embitter the defenders against the court, but not enough to cow them. The commentary in Odira says, either make your enemies your friends or crush them. Daraimi had not even attempted the former, and had failed signally at the latter. Not surprisingly, the meeting the next day between the commanders and their officers was a raucous affair, with Baruno and Daraimi loudly, and, in Daraimi's case, colorfully, blaming each other for the fiasco. The officers, the more professional ones, were taken aback, while the less professional were alternately hooting and guffawing or yelling curses themselves. Daraimi ordered a slew of lashings, which some of the officers flatly refused to carry out. Discipline was not good, and no amount of cruelty could make it better. Why should we punish them for your mistake, not so great one? You're the one who sent 1/3 of the camp away on a wild goose chase after a lot of dirty peasant rebels. He has a point, observed Baruno. I've met red-masked lizards with better skills and command. Shut the expletive up, you expletive, shot back Daraimi. Make me, retorted Bruno. Daraimi wished, not for the first time, that he could have Bruno flogged. It was at this opportune moment that Bruno's spies returned from the western border of Ihalimu. Report! Bellowed Daraimi, much too loudly. Great ones. The spies' leader prostrated himself before Bruno and Daraimi, and Bruno made a weary gesture indicating that he should rise. The leader did so with alacrity, and Daraimi, who was in a punishing mood, made a mental note to have him punished for that later. I fear the news is not good, continued the leader. An army is gathering on the border between Darzaz and Ihalimu. It seems like the Duke is marshalling his forces. Filthy traitor, said Daraimi. Wait, you silly goose, said Bruno. Let's consider his intentions. I've always found the Duke of Darzaz to be very polite and respectful of Sardranian authority. Very different from these Calamans, whom Sawaro has puffed up with pride for whatever reason. We should send messengers asking him what he is doing before we jump to conclusions. One reason our assault has been unsuccessful is that, besides being brutal, there has been no attempt to think strategically and ponder before acting. There was a murmur of agreement from the more responsible officers. We should also send messengers to court, informing them of what is happening, said Baruno's adjutant. Exalted's advisors may have wise counsel to give us. No one, of course, not even Daraimi, expected wisdom from Exalted himself. As would become clear later, Duke Edrion had not sent his forces to the border because he had undergone a sudden change of heart and decided to support Margaret after all. But the presence of an imperial army next door, in Ihalimu, wreaking destruction, had given him the jitters. He wanted to ensure that none of the soldiers would be tempted to spill over into Darzaz and indulge in a little rapine there. The Darzazian army didn't perhaps amount to very much, but with some skillful deployment, it could look greater than it was and dissuade any invaders. But Doraimi and Bruno knew nothing of that, nor did Darzaz play a role until sometime afterwards. How many were they? Asked Bruno. It looked like several thousand, Great One. It covered the entire border, so far as we could see. Of course, we only saw a small part of it. Those provincial little barbarians couldn't possibly have that many, said Doraimi, waving his left arm scornfully. I saw what I saw, Great One. Maybe it was less than it seemed. I don't know. All right, we'll send a message telling him he better not try anything or we'll roast him and his filthy little forest dwellers. I'll dictate a letter, said Bruno wearily. Who knew what rot Doraimi would say if Bruno didn't forestall him? That decadent fool ruined everything he touched. You'd better, blustered Doraimi. Meanwhile, I'll ask Exalted for reinforcements. Maybe they can help us deal with the local cockroach scum expletive here, too. Just so they answer only to me. Very good, said Bruno. The war in Ihalamu hasn't gone very well, and with luck Exalted will appoint another commander, one who has a particle of a notion what he's doing. You manage to massacre multitudes of innocents without getting the slightest actual advantage over the rebels. Cruelty and incompetence. Bravo! You whinge and whinge and whinge. Go back to your filthy little tent and cry, you little expletive. Meeting adjourned. Write your stupid letter and I'll write mine. Well, dictate. Let's see. I guess I better stop there, although there's more fun, but I better stop there. Actually, wait. One more sentence. Good. Just so I don't have to look at your stupid, ugly, decadent little face. Okay. Now I'll stop.
Good stuff.
Yeah, of course no one's here. Oh well. You should have said it was us. You should claim these things about Star Wars, then you get people in. You should just say Star Wars Showcase instead of Writer's Showcase. So we can fool people. Come on. Then you create a software so that they come into the chat. They can't leave it. So anyway, yes?
Yeah. Good stuff. I like the interaction between the bad guys is it's kind of Redwall-esque in a lot of ways, where the bad guys just hate each other's guts.
I guess there is a little something, probably accidental, but there's a little something reminiscent of Uni, I guess, in the sense that Doraimi enjoys being bad, being evil.
It feels so good to be bad.
What's that from again? I think that's familiar.
That is from All Dogs Go to Heaven 2.
Oh, I must have heard you singing it before then. Okay, because I've not seen that one, so you must have sung that before at some point. So yeah, maybe it's a little anticlimactic, the action, but hey, there we are. Anything else?
I like Margaret and what's his face, Bruno's interaction, and I like kind of just the fact that he's just a slovenly asshole. That's all.
Yeah, Bruno is a bit clueless. He's still smarter than Daraimi, but that doesn't mean he's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the dialogue was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Battle strategy. I'm not sure I got a clear picture necessarily of what was going on. Was this like a raid?
Yeah, they were doing a raid on the encampment. They went through um, the secret passages to do a raid on the camp, and the camp the camp weren't ready for it.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe I need to make it clearer. Let's see. Okay. 15.
Hmm.
Strategy. Let's see.
I guess I was just going to say maybe kind of an overview of the battle as it's happening. The raid, I mean, as it's happening.
Overview, like from above.
Yeah, kind of like how Tolkien actually does this similar thing with the Battle of the Planar Fields, kind of.
Yeah, like from my omniscient point of view. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, that makes sense. Since I'm closer in style to Tolkien anyway. Like a bird's eye view of what's going on. Yeah, because it's the way I do it. There's some bits that are closer to limited, but it's not really limited, because even when I'm doing limited, I'll usually give the perspective of the other person to whom they're talking to,
Mm,
and
I
I'll
getcha.
do asides and stuff that are. So it's basically. So I think my narrative style is basically still omniscient with a few touches of limited here and there.
Mm. So we have I guess in the back room. I've been kind of saving this. Please welcome Yuri.
No, it's not.
Your bag is being a soy boy beta cuck.
That's it.
Welcome. On that note,
Hello. How you doing, Yuri?
Yeah, hello. Sorry, my headphones like broke, and I gotta
No.
unscrew it so I can get the thing back in. Or I can just wear it. I can kind of wear it like this.
Makes sense.
Not ideal.
Hey, what can you do?
die technology, die.
I think more improve technology, improve.
That's not as melodramatic, though.
All right. So we just getting started? I miss anything, or where are we?
Just Valerian. Arian's
Yeah, you only missed me.
Oh, that's a shame. No more retarded Harry Potter characters. I didn't get my dose.
What was that?
I just remember you doing a retarded version of Harry Potter.
Oh yeah. Oh right. Oh, I did. That's true. I did. That's true. I did. That was a while ago, but yes, I did do that.
Yes, you did retarded Harry Potter.
Where they were all
the
like
author of retarded Harry Potter.
where they were all like teenagers who every now and then they would spout some academic theory. So
Oh yeah. It was funny. It was pretty funny. All right.
Yeah, that was long ago and far away.
Ah.
So, if you're ready,
Yeah, I guess you want me to go before you done?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. I'm just gonna go to my outer space thing. I don't. Let's see. I'm gonna skip into kind of the middle of it because like the beginning was overly repetitive. It's not letting me move the scroll bar. All right, we're getting somewhere now. Or the Monkey King. Maybe I'll just go back to the Monkey King. No, I'm gonna do this. No, I am gonna do the Monkey King. All right. Thank you for bearing with me during these indecisive times. Yeah, but for some reason Google has stopped letting me grab and drag the scroll bar. I find it rather offensive. All right, let's see. All right. Maybe I've already read this part, but we'll see. I'm going to get going now. The passage of time draws monkey toward conniption. 142. Time does not pass where it has no end to hold it by. It simply fogs. If I could move my head, I would bash it against the rocks. Have I read this part already? Does that sound familiar? All right, 143. Again. Teacher.
It's not familiar.
It doesn't? All right. Teacher, will you not show yourself again? I have made mistakes. Though I am equal to heaven, I am unequal to the earth, and I am unequal to the Buddha. Please, teacher, come speak to me again. I'm no longer your teacher, monkey. That cannot be avoided, cannot be rescinded. But come in some years, you will have a new one. You will be freed, Sunuko. Tien Dasho. When, master? When the plan provides. Again, he fades away. 155, all day conjuring the cooking pot. Master Sabuti stirs his pot, saying little, and none so that it can be heard. 266. Time is incoherent. For all that he might try, the great sage cannot fully comprehend it. Do believe that he has tried, and had 500 years in which to do so. That which is outside of all time, that which is outside of time is an existential horror beyond all consideration. Time is incoherent, and the struggle within it is to suffer. But this is not necessary. The great sage has been under a mountain for years he knew not, as he did not count days nor hours. His head sticks out of a crack in a rock, and his hands flap out on either side of his head, utterly useless in any way for scratching his nose. He once managed to get his fingers around a root, which could bridge that synapse between the tortuously functionless hands and the torturous dancing of Monkey's nose. He does not know how long it lasted, but that first moment of satisfaction after a handful of centuries was, he remembers now fondly, the highlight of his incarceration. No matter how he is begged, the tutelary god assigned to quench his thirst with molten copper and beat back his hunger by feeding him iron pellets will not lower himself to scratching his nose for him. The great sage comforts himself with the knowledge that someone else scratching an itch will never be as satisfying as somehow scratching it yourself. Scratching his nose is a memory more treasured to him than the fear he imagines having been in the eyes of the Jade Emperor, when the great sage, who had once been merely the handsome Monkey King, and before that simply the Stone Monkey, had been on the verge of dethroning him and ruling over heaven and the three worlds himself. He had thought that imagined look of fear would stay his greatest love, his greatest joy, but no. It was when he succeeded in scratching his nose. That memory is one which satisfies and tortures him as though the two were the same thing. The memory of how Sunukong, of all people, came to be trapped under a mountain, of all places. Heaven has insulted him, and he has beaten every fighter it has thrown at him. He is the most powerful being in the universe. Nothing could have stopped him from taking that throne. Whoever sits on the throne rules the kingdom. His lack of wisdom leads him to believe. The perspective of the time-bound is like that of a tear in a thread on a sheet of cloth, on a sheet of cloth. The great sage has no concept of those threads crisscrossing his own, no way to comprehend the fullness that underlies the symbols, which are all that he can see. He mistakes the metaphors that his mind throws up for the reality that lies beyond them, beyond time. He has no perspective but his own, and he is a single point in an undimensioned line. To be truly immortal, he must learn to look beyond time into reality. To be truly aware, he must learn to see beyond himself. To be wise, he must learn to see beyond his emotions. And to be free, he must learn to see me. Time is a surface tension on an ocean of chaos. Time is the thing that spins yin and yang together and the threads you uses to weave the universe. You cannot see time, and what you see as you is just the thread. The universe begins in a messy swirl of twisting yarn that you weave into meaningful shapes, and you are in essence what I am, defining and dividing this from that, and here from there, making a difference between the wanted and the unwanted, the joyous and the miserable, the agony and the ecstasy. That is the wheel on which these threads are spun, and you do it as a function of existing. You can do nothing else. The great sage is not from your world, but he is locked there beneath the mountain of the five elements just the same. He's from another layer of the cloth from you, so to speak. To explain in a more concrete and less precise way, he's from another continent of different dimensions. There are 4 continents on this imaginary map for you to picture. Yours is shaped like a triangle to the south of the center, with 3 equal dimensions. There are vast oceans separating you from the crescent-shaped eastern mass, where this poor fellow trapped under that mountain is born. Now, under the 5 elements mountain in your world, he lives and relives his whole life, blaming and shaming in turn each stitch that time has left in his memory. The rules are different in his home, as might be expected from its shape. The experience of being there is essentially different in just the way that a triangle differs from a crescent, mostly accent. In his world, a monkey can hatch from a stone egg. His eyes can flash up at heaven bright enough that the Jade Emperor himself might take notice. Best to start from the beginning, imaginary though a beginning might be when existence sits before you like a 12-dimensional sphere. But I tell you about this, Sage Monkey, because you have something to learn from him. It may not be apparent at first, but please believe me, that just as your existence consists of the creation of patterns from the spooling chaos that time feeds you, mine consists mainly of bringing an end to suffering, though not, I suppose, to pain. In its way, pain can cure suffering, just as a prison can be liberating. 333, the making of the monkey. All right. The Jade Emperor sits on his throne, thralling to the music of the spheres that spin between the hands of juggling nymphs. It is evening in heaven. His wrist rests on the arm of his throne, fingers holding a chalice of some precious material gifted to him by some high being or other. This is just another evening of entertainment prepared for him by the ranks of gods beneath him. He doesn't see them as either higher or lower, but according to the position that he holds, all must be treated according to the position that they hold. The most beautiful nymphs with their most beautiful spheres, and everyone in the audience has a chair assigned. It is not proper, but he brings his attention back to the chalice anyway, some sort of sky blue jade, most rare. It is translucent like glass, even rarer. These are just thoughts like static electricity in his mind, hopping around. He feels cloudy in all of this revelry. It gets old to him. What interests him is the elixir within, said to grant however many extra years of life, as though he'd not had enough tacked on to the end of his span already. What interests him is the heavenly brewer Lao-Tzu, the old boy, too smart to let himself get bogged down in a court with all of these white gold chains and marks of rank, lives somewhere far away, and only comes not when he must, but when he feels. When did the Jade Emperor last see him? His eyes close, which really they ought not to do, according to the customs of the court, and in just the moment that they close, the weather around the palace foments into a storm, thunder drowning out the music of the entertainment. The Jade Emperor follows in his mind the great bolt of lightning, that sound of which broke his tedium for a moment. Something which had not happened in ages. It finds its mark on a great boulder, shattering it into the shape of a little stone monkey. This should be interesting. The words form in his mind, and then he puts himself back to his proper position. He had relaxed for but a breath, but it was enough to clear his mind. He takes a sip and shows appreciation in the proper way. 404, A War on Death. As hard as heaven is to describe to humans who swim like geese on top of 3 dimensions of space, breathing that 4th dimension, which is time, to those who remember their dreams, the mountain of fruit and flowers is easy. The bolt of lightning that the Jade Emperor watches in heaven has found its way to the land of Aulai, separated from your human realm by an ocean that is composed of more salt than water, but really very little of that. In every way that your world from the core of Earth, well past the edges of Andromeda, is triangular, so is the home of the stone monkey a semicircle with its flat side facing the core of reality. Cosmology, not just cosmology, but anything really, is near impossible to explain to one who sees the world only in these metaphorical segments that are thoughts or words. The monkey, trapped, bowing over under the 5 elements mountain, waiting for his master to come, a master just as human as you, could never have been held in this home of his, where we are focused now. He is thinking about his birth. He can remember it. A very fundamental difference between him and you. He came from the earth wholesale, sparked by a bolt of lightning, which he does not remember. His first memory, a memory which stretches into the current incarceration, is as sudden as the light turning on. One moment, a clump of earth is gathering energy together like a planet in gestation, and the next, monkey is opening his eyes. Each eye is like a star in its own right, and he looks unblinking up to the heavens, comprehending none of it. Then the energy that struck life into him begins to need. Life needs life instinctively, by law. He feeds, and as he feeds, the spark of repressed free will, of chafing at the rules that he himself had built, which escaped the Jade Emperor, dim and mix with whatever fruit he can find and fit into his belly. As he eats, he is the food. His legs run until they are exhausted. His arms climb, eyes look, every part of him independent. He is a living confederation. And he carries that dimming bulb within him into the rivers, lakes, forests, and streams, interacting with every animal he sees, learning with every moment, developing some sense of himself as separate from the mountain out of which he was hatched. The development of a single governing self within the stone monkey is gradual and inevitable, but there is a moment where he chooses his identity. People are given their thoughts and names from birth, but he is free of any such restrictions when he comes upon a tribe of monkeys, seeking shelter from the demons that cover his world. They jeer at him as monkeys jeer at every newcomer. The stone monkey, happy to find some society at last, jeers right back. He finds in speaking to them in monkey that universal language of hoots and hisses and gestures, that they believe there is a cave beyond the waterfall where they have gathered. They say that any monkey who can go behind this waterfall shall be named their king. The stone monkey, having never had parents and so never having learned fear, volunteers immediately. He does this not in words, but in action, as is the language of monkeys. He leaps behind the waterfall into the chasm beyond. Expecting nothing, he is not surprised to find whole palaces complete with food and furnishing just beyond the veil of falling water. He comes out and leads his new subjects into the water curtain cave. And here they make their home. Here he is king, and his word is law. I am no longer to be called the stone monkey, he decrees in no uncertain terms. I am handsome, and I am a king. So now I am to be referred to only as handsome monkey king. This is our first law. The word stone is banned. He makes a nation of these complicated spirit monkeys, a court to him as grand as any emperor's, and he revels in it with the ferocity of youth, taking on all challengers and licking all wounds. He is happily a self-made king until the day he meets those great, noble truths, old age and death. Trapped under his mountain, unable to scratch his nose, which has just started to itch again, the great sage equaling heaven remembers this moment suddenly and with great pain. That pain leads him to reliving that desperate moment when the mountain drops on him, a moment which he has been living for 500 years, or just about, of a complete inability to do anything at all. His first experience with these emotions is in seeing his old friend who was once young. "What's wrong with him?" he asks, gesturing at the gray-faced ball of wrinkles and bones that was once his friend. "I knew him well, and he was strong." A young pair of monkeys happily laugh and poke the old fellow, stealing a bit of food from him, he being too tired and weak to fight back. The stone monkey steals it back, to feed his old friend from his hand. This monkey eats, he declares, and food finds its way back to him. So he does not have enough food, he asks, dumbfounded, because he remembers this monkey in his prime, able to take from the two who had just robbed him quite easily. They had been much smaller then. Soon the answer comes, that he is too old to eat much anyway, the handsome Monkey King never having noticed the old before finally sees age. I happen to everyone, Age whispers in his ear. And the lightning is back. His eyes shine like dim stars under the mountain. His eyes light up like a pair of fires. He struggles again, as he has many times, more times than your heart is beaten. He struggles just to get his hand close enough to scratch his nose. He fights the facts of nature just as hard as when he was the great sage equaling heaven, trapped under a mountain as he had when he was king. The old eat, he declares. Then he sees that his friend, who the space of a memory ago had nearly beaten him wrestling, has stopped moving. The old eat, and he forces a banana into the mouth of this dead pile of wrinkles, sinew, and maybe a little meat, moving the jaw up and down until the banana is a slightly red mash. The great sage scrunches his nose, but it is of no use. He sees his subjects move to feed the old, but the old can only eat so much. Age speaks to him again. I come to all, not to me, screeches the handsome Monkey King's fear and grief. I will learn. No, I will never learn to die. And he is gone from his castle. He has the freedom then, as the handsome Monkey King, to run from his emotions. Now he cannot even move his head far enough to make a sound on the wall of the cave that surrounds him. He begins to yell, the old eat, his past taking him over for a moment. His tutelary god comes down to pour molten lead down his throat and give him pellets of iron to eat. It settles him, to say the least. Please, please, he begs. And the god meets his eyes in a moment of pity and listens. Please scratch my nose. If I scratch your nose, and you will learn nothing from its itch, comes the curt reply. Learn first to accept it as a sensation like any other, and then to enjoy it, as a sensation equal to any other. The god actually does feel some compassion for the monkey, but he knows that reacting to a stimulus is the core of all suffering. In his mind, again, he is traveling. He covers first and frantically that world that might be called the Eastern continent. Those whom he meets are brutish, never questioning the nature of their jungle existence, their hunting, their gathering, their warring and intoxication. The vast majority are demons, the rest animal spirits and giant men. None have the discipline or the drive to make any more of themselves than they are. He is unable to make a single one understand that death is as unnatural as life, that the only possible purpose of time is to improve. In short, his home is a land without teachers, barbaric. He reaches the shore and, seeing the wood drifting in the sea, realizes that he can do that. He can drift in the sea. If he cannot find a teacher here, then perhaps he figures on the far shore. The far shore and on the far shore. In his earliest memory, he stares down the Emperor of High Heaven, so he knows beyond a doubt that there must be something beyond the sea. It is a long journey. He starves for much of it, but his name is not written in the book of death yet. He has a purpose of his own to fulfill first. He is almost on fire with that purpose. It drives him like an unscratchable itch on the nose. He cannot put word or thought to it. It rides him like he does the sailless raft he knows nothing about making, but makes anyway. His eyes are red and lined like raisins. He feels pain but does not suffer. He does not resist the waves, and sometimes even a fish is kind enough to flop into his bony hands. He devours it and wonders vaguely what his life would be like as a fish. This floating has become his life. He has no control of this, but legs too weak to paddle. And when dreams and waking have both been consumed by the endless salty blue of his rudderless journey, his raft is suddenly still. He rolls over, his skin covered in cracks, but blood too dry to bleed, and then stabbing sand of the beach begins to dry it further. The pain wakes his mind. He becomes aware that something has shifted. Something is fundamentally different about the nature of his experience, but is nothing that he can point to as he crawls on hands and knees into the forest. Fresh water. He hears, smells, sees it in his mind, and is lucky enough to find it. After a span and shape of time at sea that few mortals ever know, he has finally started his journey. Never does he doubt his choices. It is in his mind then that it is better to serve a wise teacher than to rule a whole kingdom of monkeys. All right, I'll stop there.
Actually, yeah, that does sound a little bit familiar.
Yeah, I figured a while in, but I don't think Balerion heard it the last time, so at least he's caught up.
Yeah, that's fair.
Unless he's like checked out, he still hasn't unmuted, so he probably didn't listen to it at all. The whole thing was an exercise in futility.
What? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was away. I was listening, but I was away.
Okay. All the better. That way you're not like scrolling on something. You're actually like listening while you're not distracted.
Well, I was away in the kitchen, so I could hear more or less what was going on. I'm not totally sure. You might have actually read this bit earlier. Is Monkey still in prison, right?
Yeah, he's still in prison.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a repetitive nature to like the kind of the introduction. The introduction is called 500 Years Under a Mountain, or maybe 500 Dreams Under a Mountain, and so there is a bit of repetitiveness, like that I kind of worked in the hackneyed state I was in when I edited it all together. But yeah, we're getting close to where he's not under a mountain anymore.
Okay, good.
That'll be that'll be the day, right?
That'll be interesting, yeah, to see what happens with that. Spoiler. Sorry about the spoiler, Blight Lord.
Okay. Jeez, yeah, no, I've got a lot written here. I don't even know, like, 84 pages. Yeah,
Cool.
It's like he gets out like halfway through what I've written.
That is good.
Yeah. So yeah, because
Go ahead.
yeah, because spoiler, but the monkey eventually gets out of his prison, and then that's when he goes to the west to India with the priest. That there's actually an historical basis in the sense that there was a not priest, monk.
Tang Sung. He's kind of a priest monk. He's like same difference in Buddhism, I think.
Yeah.
I guess he was more of a monk because he traveled. A priest probably wouldn't have traveled like that. Like there was an aesthetic aspect to what he was doing.
Yeah, so he was, and he did go to India, and he did leave an account, and onto that's been grafted the mythology of the monkey king, and there's also Pigsy and Sandy, I think, is the other one.
Yep, that's correct.
And I don't remember, but I'm guessing their story is this similar to monkeys in that they got punished and then they're having a chance.
Yeah. I forget Sandy's story. Sandy's so weird. He's just totally quiet. Pig had like lascivious thoughts about a dancer or something. He was like a general in the heavenly court, and like he had like I don't know if he molested her or if it was mutual. I forget, but he got punished to be born as a pig for being a pig.
Makes sense.
Chastity. Yeah. Breaking chastity. Can't have that in heaven.
Yeah, he was a chauvinist pig, so he got punished.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. It's funny, it does it. He's a chauvinist pig. Yeah. And then like he's ridiculous. Like he's just so like each of the three characters kind of represent like a level of I guess spiritual focus in a way. So you have a chakra really kind of. It's like the first three chakras are represented by first Sandy as the root chakra, then Piggy as like the pleasure chakra, and then Monkey as the will chakra, right? But then the will actually has to be taught to follow the heart, and so the monk represents the heart chakra. And then the horse, I think, would be the horse is actually like a dragon that did something wrong, and so he's being punished too. It's like
okay.
Like the whole thing is like all these prisoners that the Buddha sends on this journey to keep the monk safe. It's a cool story.
Yeah. So from the show back in '79. I remember Pigsy. I remember Sandy existing but not saying much. But I remember Pigsy doing a lot of comic relief.
Yeah. He's like, he's pure greed, right? Like he is the symbol of pure greed, right? So it's like no matter what, he's always getting himself into a situation that then drags everybody else into a situation because he just has no self-control. And Monkey's always picking on him. Monkey is just so ruthless towards him. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Whereas he likes Sandy. Like, he likes Sandy. He likes a horse. The only one he picks on is Piggy. But yeah, we're to the point where I do introduce those characters probably next reading. It's like
cool.
He doesn't come from under the mountain. All right. Cool. Any other thoughts on it in general, or?
No, good emotion. A lot of my previous thoughts kind of apply where it's a good emotion from Monkey. Very good putting him in the headspace, putting us in his headspace when he sees the passage of time and take one of his friends away.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So I guess it's Dunn's turn. Dun.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So I have a few options.
Dragon Sex. Sorry. I apologize.
That book got finished last week.
Which book?
The second Dragonstrife, he calls it, because he is weird. Got a few options. We can continue with. You remember Malachor, right? The traveling salesman who keeps bugging you, Valerian. I have that one.
Malachor is. Okay, I was getting for half a second. I was getting confused with the good guy, but the good guy's name was not Morgel.
Benacor.
Mordred.
Benacor. The good guy's Mordred?
Oh, and a different thing. I was getting confused with a chap in a different story named whose name I think is Mordred, who's a good guy, but Malachor is the chap who's like a credit card salesman or something.
That's funny. So he's like a demon that's this credit card salesman?
Is that correct?
Well, basically, he's essentially kind of he's essentially Sauron in some ways. In a lot of ways, where he's giving out rings to kings in his fight against the elves. Though I did add a little bit of a twist where the elves are allied with basically creatures that live under the sea, like in H.P. Lovecraft's Shadows of Innsmouth.
Like the Cthulhu?
Yeah, kind of Cthulhu, but more like just the deep ones.
So the elves have tentacles?
The elves don't have tentacles, their buddies do.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Yeah,
I feel like there's another porn joke in here, but I'm not going to make it.
No! Sorry.
There's the porn joke, but there's a bunch of hentai jokes.
Yeah, there.
So a lot of them look like this. This is kind of what I imagine for a lot of them looking when they're above on the land.
I can't see very well.
Look like magic cards. Got it.
Not magic cards, chaotic cards. Chaotic is way more
So, real quick, before I let you go.
Sorry about that. I'm checking YouTube because I can't see it properly.
So chaotic is like
I'm checking
magic, but more complex?
Yeah, basically you get a 6-creature team. Then you have a deck of attack cards, music cards. It's a lot more interesting setup, and the stats are much more interesting.
Imagens de cartas de chaotic. Images maybe okay. They have Portuguese and then they got English, and then they got more English.
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready for the traveling salesman story.
Okay, yeah, basically, that was remember him doing, like going around selling people evil stuff. So, Malachard. I need to find a slogan for that, though.
Yeah. Maybe I should. Yeah, I can't remember where I left off. I think I left off at the beginning of chapter 2, I think it was.
Yeah, at this point, all I remember is he given some rings to this chap and this lady, and they were fighting, I think.
Yes. Farah. Yeah, there was a duel between basically a group of people called the Olympians, where they just decided to put the battle to a contest of champions. So, and then Malachor came in and broke one of the combatants' minds once he had solidified his control over him through his ring.
So, don't buy credit cards. Malachor, where there's a will, there's a way.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip.
He probably invented that song, too.
Yeah. Okay. Other setup. The only other setup that needs to happen is that all that's really happened so far is that this group of people thought they were going to lose. Then it turned out that this ancient being was manipulating both sides in order to make it so that he could be able to take both sides over or extend into one of the sides so that he could take control of them without losing resources in his war against the
Sorry. Hello? Hello? Did you just die? Anyway, something about Malachor giving his ring so he can take over the resources of somebody. Is that right?
Manpower, but yes. He's got plenty of resources. He just needs manpower for his war to come.
Human resources. That's where I got the term human livestock from in my novel, by the way.
Makes sense.
Human livestock. Human resources. Okay.
Yeah. And one of his requests was that his friend, who actually has the ability to control animals with her mind, get one of the rings so that she can be healed. Because she is basically bedridden and is trapped in her own body. Because of actually what we will find out now. Chapter 2, The Beastmaster. Amora was having the dream again. She couldn't run, she couldn't move, she couldn't hide. All she could do was endure the torture over and over again. She didn't have the dream every night, but when it did, it hit just as hard as it had the first time. You're a freak, Father snarled as he shoved her backward into the mine shaft. Amora screamed as she fell, fear boiling inside her. The abrupt and sudden crash as Amora hit the ground, her bone shattering with a sickening crunch. And yet, she didn't die. Amora cried and cried, unable to move, trapped inside her own pain-racked body. Please speed up. But it didn't. She had to live with the pain until the dream had run its course. Without thinking, she'd reached out with her mind, trying to lash onto an animal that would at least give her some form of relief. At last, she grabbed onto a cat who'd made its way down the shaft. Without hesitation, she forced the creature to run off and draw someone to her location. Eventually, she'd come upon a group of mining slaves. As soon as they saw the cat, they chased after it, likely starving for some fresh meat after who knew how long without. Finally, the slaves found her broken and destroyed body. "We should leave, Kamul," one of the slaves said, drawing away from her. She wanted to scream at him to help her, or at least put her out of her misery, but all she could manage was a whimper. "No," the one called Kamul had said, walking over to her and carefully testing her arms and leg. When he got a whimper, he stopped and moved on, by finally pulling off his ragged vest and tying it to his lantern pole. "Come on, I can't carry her back to the camp by myself. She's dead, son." One of the older slaves shook his head. "Poor girl clearly has her arms and legs broken, possibly her back as well." "I have to try." Camille shook his head. "We have to help." Some of the other slaves exchanged wary looks, but they removed their shirts or vests and started helping Camille to make a makeshift litter. Amora had never been so thankful in her life. Despite her initial protest, the old man, Garen, had tended to her with the skill of a master physician, carefully sending her bones and feeding her as if he were his own child. Camille and the others worked extra to cover the old man's absence in the mines. Finally, she felt well enough to talk to her rescuers. It came as a hoarse croak at first from lack of use, but when Garen heard her raspy whisper, he ran to grab Camille and the other slaves. "My name is Amora," she recounted. "My father is Sarlin, the Lord Governor over the mining pits. Lately I've been displaying strange abilities, like how I made that cat go near you and draw you to me. My father tried to kill me by throwing me down the mine shaft, but here I am." Once the story was concluded, Camille and the others had discussed the situation in hushed tones. They tried to go out of earshot to her, but Amora had invaded the mind of a small rat in order to covertly eavesdrop on the conversation. "We should find a place to leave her," Jason, ever the pessimist, said. "If she's found, they'll kill all of us." "No," Camille said firmly. "She could be our way out of here." "How?" Jason had countered. "She's a cripple, unable to do anything." "Well, what will happen to her father when the other lords find out what he did?" Camille asked. "I don't know how it's done here in Braith, but in the West they will condemn him for attempted murder. Braith and nobility are filth," and Marin spat to the side. "They could murder their own mothers, and not even the king would do anything. The law doesn't mean anything unless you're a peasant. I'm not going to abandon her." Camille glanced to the side toward Amora. "We're going to escape, with her help." It took several different arguments for Camille to convince his friends, but after she demonstrated the extent of her powers, they had finally given in. The first step was getting rid of the overseers and freeing the other slaves. Amora had forced hundreds of rats and other cave animals to devour the overseers, while Camille and the others broke open the pens and armed the slaves. A hand on her shoulder pulled her out of her rest. Amora opened her eyes to see Camille standing over her bed, clad in a dark set of armor covered by a black robe. Oops. When she looked closer, she saw that it was his old set, but the color had changed to a black so deep that it seemed to eat light, and his black cloak hung around him like a shroud. "Are you all right?" she asked eagerly. "I'm fine," he smiled and took her hand. "Better than fine, even." "Oh, this is the one you were telling me about, Kabul." A tall man with a gaunt face walked over him, eyes strangely iridescent in the light of the small candle. "I see why you wish to save her. She burns with great power." Amora wanted to shrink back from the strange visitor. "Who is this?" she asked, fear coloring her voice. There was something about him, a clearly visible aura of power emanating from all around him. "It's all right." Camille's tone was comforting as he squeezed her hand, middle fingers gentle. "I found a way to heal you." Fear was immediately replaced with hope as soon as she heard that. "Really?" she asked, eyes flicking back and forth between the two. "I don't have to deal with this pain anymore?" "And more." The stranger removed a ring from a small box in his hand and slid it onto her finger. "Be made whole." His voice didn't rise, but it was full of power. The instant his hand left hers, the ring clamped onto her finger, sensation rushing back into her body as the constant pain vanished without even a particle all remaining. Gasping, Amora sat up, hand grasping onto the covers and throwing them aside. Mind still reeling, she pushed herself onto her feet for the first time in years, and stood by herself. She raised her hand to her face, experimentally moving the fingers and swinging her arms around. I can walk. She couldn't continue. The emotion was too strong. Unable to restrain herself, Amora rushed to Camille and wrapped her arms around her faithful friend, crying into his chest. I'm whole, she whispered. I'm whole. You were never broken. Camille held her close, almost like she imagined a big brother might. That made her cry harder. The unfamiliar man was looking at Camille with a strange expression on his face, speculative almost. You are not what I would have expected, he said after a moment of careful observation. More or less than you thought, Camille asked, not letting go of Amora as he patted her back, gently allowing her to unload all of her pent-up emotions through a flood of cheers. More, Malachor said slowly. Quite a bit more. Casually, he offered his hand toward Amora. Come, allow me to show you what you are capable of. Sniffling, Amora wiped her nose and patted Camille's arm to indicate she was done. Dutifully, he let her go. What can I do? She asked. Come, he offered. Camille, he offered again, hand still outstretched. I'll help you through. Camille knows the way already. Are we going somewhere? Amora asked, confused. You'll see. Camille put his hand on her shoulder. We have a new home, Amora. Our new lord has gifted to us. Where? She asked, gazing at her new master. Something inside her was protesting against any master, but something was suppressing her will. Slowly, though, everything faded away, and there was only the desire to serve. Follow me. Malachor took her hand, and the world shifted. Amora gasped and looked down at herself, a strange suit of armor and black cloak appearing on her body, a bird-shaped mask made of dark metal appearing on her face. Though she didn't feel anxious despite the enclosure of the metal, she reached up to feel the mask, discovering a bird skull-shaped mask extending downward over her mouth. What is this? She asked, looking down at her hand, marveling that the ring was still on her gauntleted hand. She'd never worn armor before. She'd always been too frail. This felt light as air. This is the world between the realms of the living and the dead, Malachor explains, glowing with fiery light as she and Camille were sheathed in shadow. This ring grants you the ability to draw on this realm's power, though eventually your body will be consumed, leaving only your mind and soul behind, enclosed by this armor, immortal, unchanging. At least I can walk, Amora thought, looking down at her ring. It fascinated her, enthralled her. Follow me. The stranger put his hand on her shoulder. Then she felt it, the pull of an inexorable force dragging her through the air and out the window into a straight black and gray sky. She turned her head to see Camille flying beside them, body suffused in dark green and black smoke. Despite expecting to feel nausea being high up without a bird's constitution to settle her nerves. Amora felt exhilarated as they traveled further and further south. Finally, they reached a large fortress surrounded from white stone, black iron mounted on the battlements to afford extra cover for the defenders. But there was something strange about the city. All over the city, a light emanated from each of the stones as if it were alive. However, the light coming from it was a sickly, indescribable hue that seemed to twist the eye. Uncharacteristically, Amora found herself admiring the tall tower and wide city as they descended toward the walls. Abruptly, Camille vanished, his dark aura remaining behind for a few seconds as Malachor pulled Amora back into the world. As he pulled her back, Amora could feel the transfer between realms going through her, But as she did, she felt the knowledge of how she would be able to do it on her own slide into her mind. As soon as they re-entered the physical world, the strange light of the city faded away, leaving only bone-white stone. People in black Valentian garb wandered through the streets, 3 skulls instead of the usual moons emblazoned on their chests and sewn into their sleeves. "Welcome to the city of Mordreth." Malachor gestured around them. "Amazing," Amora whispered, looking down at her legs and flexing her toes. It felt so strange to be able to use those after all this time without their use. "So, why is this place glowing in the world beyond?" "Because of the stones," Malachor stroked the rampart with a single hand. "I created by transporting stones from the other side and infusing my blood into each section of the mortar and piece of masonry." His eyes rested on the 2 of them. "This place will draw you back should you be defeated in battle. The rings will be pulled here due to the nature of the power you draw on." Amora looked down at her ring, then closed her hand into a fist. "So, how long will we have these?" "As long as your service lasts." Malachor tapped his fingers against his elbows, "which could be a very, very long time, possibly centuries. But in exchange, I will grant you eternal lives, though eventually your bodies will fade, leaving nothing behind." "But we'll still have these powers?" Amora asked. "Yes, they will still be yours," Malachor promised. "Your natural abilities will be enhanced, as new ones will be granted as you learn to master the power of the rings." "Good," Amora opened her hand. "I'll pay any price to keep this." Camul. Malachor nodded to her, then turned his attention toward Camul. "Follow me, both of you." Without a word, he vanished, leaving only an afterimage behind him. Shrugging, Camul complied, which Amora followed quickly thereafter. They flew through the air to the central tower while 3 figures were similar aura to Camul waited. As soon as they entered the physical world, their aura faded into their black clothing, though there was something about their eyes that was abnormal. There were strange veins surrounding their eyes, and across their cheeks, black orange irises burning in their faces. 2 of them were men, one of them almost as tall as Malachor, certainly taller than Camul, the other one slightly shorter, but both had dark hair and were slim in their build. The last was a woman with long dark hair and features similar enough to the younger man to be siblings, likely the same height as Camul. She had a sultry look about her eyes and mouth, very angular face, and when the woman looked at Camul, there was clear interest. "Interesting," Amora thought as she glanced at Camul, who was studiously avoiding looking at the woman. "Very interesting. My lord." The tall man knelt, followed by the other 2 Olympians. "I assume the excursion to Braith was a success." He nodded to Camul and Amora. 2 more have joined our ranks. You were expecting only 1. "Yes." Malachor took a deep breath and nodded toward the tower. "We have enough to start moving west. I want the entirety of Olyntius moved off the island and onto the mainland." Amora frowned in confusion, but remained silent. Camul didn't. "Isn't Olyntius the height of civilization? The greatest city of the known world?" "Because it's vulnerable to attack from the sea," Farah explained, folding her arms, orange eyes narrowed slightly. "The capital itself has been attacked several times by the enemy. In our own ships that they took from the colonies up north." The younger Olympian man and grimaced. "After all the work I put into them." "There will be more ships soon." Malachor flexed his hand. "There are 2 that I know that will be pliable to the offer of power in exchange for their allegiance." Casually, he motioned to the younger man. "Morgamere, come with me. Amora, you as well. Your gifts with the beasts of the land will be particularly useful on the ocean. The what? Amora demanded. You cannot drown if that is your worry. Morgamir didn't say with any malice, just stating facts. But she could tell that he was just trying to be helpful. But it was the same way she could tell that the dark-haired woman was attracted to Kamul. Besides, I will make sure that you do not require saving. You have my word. How kind, Amor thought, genuinely touched by his offer. Thank you. We leave immediately, Malachor nodded to Kamul and the tall Olyntian man and woman. Go to Olyntius and hold it. Use the Aesir to move quickly between Mordrith and the island while I gather our allies and begin moving our people off the island. And that is the end. Oha, you guys are still muted.
Sorry, yeah, I'm unmuted. I listened quite thoroughly. I enjoyed the like kind of the trick with the rats, like the rat rebellion. That was pretty cool. It does leave me wondering who this character is, and it does sound like she's getting like a much worse bargain with all this than she thinks. You know, like her whole being's going to waste away except for her mind and soul. That sounds very Faustian.
Yeah, it's the case with all of them.
Malacorp. All it takes is a ring. Malacorp. I'm trying to think of something that would involve Malacorp. It never expires. There we go.
We own your soul.
Malacorp never expires.
We have a lot of big interests.
So this lady was crippled, but then Malacorp came along and he gave her these powers in exchange for basically she's going to be his slave like these other people are.
Yep, precisely.
And her name is Jamora?
Amora.
Amora.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at first I was thinking it was Camorra, like the Neapolitan Mafia, but no.
Yeah.
And Mool is like her boyfriend or something?
Big brother.
Oh.
Brother type.
Oh, okay. Whoops. That got kind of gross.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, she's like his little sister that he took care of.
Aw.
When she was very, very badly injured, and she helped him in turn.
So, but even when she was injured, she still had powers of some kind or other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's basically her mind is her power, and it still is, but now it's been drastically amplified, and she's been given her life back in a lot of ways, but it comes at a very steep price.
Yeah. Oh, and her father pushing her down a mine shaft. That's a little something. That's not very family friendly.
Agreed. Very bad man. Very, very bad man.
And what was there with something slight of their build? Something like that, where I don't know, or I thought maybe slight of build or something would be enough.
Okay, maybe that was I think I did say slight of build, but maybe I just I misread it. Let me actually check that.
It's not a big deal.
Let me check. Oh, slim in their build. Yeah, that's actually. Yep, you're right.
So is Malachor going to go around corrupting more people with his credit card?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, he's going to grab some Somali pirates next.
Somali as in Somaliland, as in Somalia?
Somali pirate types, or fantasy edition, I guess you'd say. But
that got topical fast.
Well, or maybe Ottoman pirates is better, or Ottoman pirate types.
Does he eventually get bought out by a bigger company?
No, he'll see what happens. I've already written what happens, at least for a temporary point in the story for him.
Okay. We're just going to go around buying everyone out.
Yes, for the time being.
Was he found Amazon?
Fan of Amazon? I don't know. Yeah, I'm debating whether or not to try and finish this one or Dragon Blaster Season 2. Because I'm actually pretty close with both of them. I've already gotten to about 40k words on this, and Dragon Blaster's even longer than the first one. It's currently about 200-ish pages.
Does Dragon Blaster 2 have the raccoon in it?
I need to put a bed in there. I need to insert something. Maybe I'll make the pansexual raccoon somebody who's fighting with the omniscient narrator.
Yeah.
The narrator being in a fight in the middle of the story, that'd be kind of fun.
Well, basically the idea is that the omniscient narrator puts out inserts his own commentary into the book at multiple points. And it might be funny where season 2 has him fighting with somebody else, having verbal fights. Like, wait, what? How does this make sense? It's like, okay, who are you? I am Pan, the pansexual raccoon. Oh, you like all genders? No, I like pans. No, I just like pans.
Those cavities of those pans are so man.
How does that even work?
I don't want to know.
And like that, yeah, I just think that would be a funny conversation to have. It's just like, wait, okay, who are you? Okay, how have you inserted yourself? I am the god of chaos. Okay, that explains a lot. Your story is repetitive. Yes, as are all Saturday morning cartoons. Well, we need to spruce it up. We need to add certain things in here, like this and this and this. Okay, let's do that then. Fine. What are you, my producer now? Yes. And
that could get pretty funny. That could get pretty funny.
Okay.
But also, that would be funny. And I'd also note that a lot of the humor of the story itself has to do with how they interact with the normal world, because that's why the funniest bits are all near the beginning. For that reason, because most of it's of the original book, the first book. So that's where the humor chiefly lies, and that's the main merit of it, I think, is having things like, how did you get fracking surgery in the middle of the night and stuff like that. So if we can find more bizarre interchanges between them and like normal people minding their own business.
Yeah. I haven't really. Most of the humor has come from just the kids interacting with each other. Now that they're more comfortable with each other and just letting loose with some of their weird senses of humor and letting more of their personalities out. Yeah,
that's good. But I think that that where they're interacting with like the normal real world is where it got really entertaining in the first book. So
I've mostly just been they're on a road trip. I know at one point they so far in the book they actually interact with a pair of Mormons that are living in a trailer park.
that could be amusing.
And where it's just they're like super nice people, and I actually named one of them after one of my old mission companions.
And their names are Brandon and Brandon. No, their names are Brent and Brandon.
Ross Lee, but yeah.
Same general idea.
Yeah. Alrighty, boys. Probably have to call it good for today. Thank you both for coming. This has been fun.
It was a good
one. And Codex came in at the last minute. Poor chap.
So Deadpool. If you are me, then who am I? Okay.
All right, guys. I'll see you guys later.
Alrighty.
All right. Good.
All right. Bye.
Enough! Kill me! Just end it.